Hello dear viewers, thanks for joining us on this edition of the Midday Bilingual Newscast on Equinox Television. The first part of the news will be in the French language with you, Julian Pepesai. Good afternoon to you.
Bon après-midi à vous, Immaculée de Forquet. Mesdames et messieurs, bon après-midi. Merci de rester fidèles à Equinox Télévision. Tout d'abord, cette interpellation de 4 présumés trafiquants d'ossements humains à Bafoussam dans la région de l'Ouest. Ils sont tombés dans les filets de la Légion de gendarmerie au cours d'un énième forfait. D'autres précisions dans ce reportage de Leclerc Sakel.
Des colis de notre genre exposés à la cour de la Légion de gendarmerie de l'Ouest. Dans ces sacs, des ossements humains saisis entre les mains de ces individus alors qu'ils s'apprêtaient à écouler au marché noir.
Suite aux harcèlements téléphoniques par des inconnus à l'endroit d'un tiers faisant état de ce qu'ils détenaient, les diamants prêts à écouler en toute quiétude.
3 squelettes humains complets, soigneusement emballés. Ces présumés profaneurs détombent dans le département du Noun, extrait le butin, qu'ils revendent à coups de millions de francs CFA. Interpellés dans le Noun, c'est au camp Oignon à Bafoussam que les réniques humains ont été trousés après exploitation des suspects, preuve que c'est une chaîne bien organisée pour une riposte proportionnelle.
En exploitant les pistes qui nous ont, n'est-ce pas, permis de mettre la main sur 3 présumés trafiquants en possession de 2 squelettes complets. Au cours de l'exploitation, nous avons, n'est-ce pas, interpellé un 3e larron.
Chaque année dans la région de l'Ouest, des dizaines de jeunes et même des adultes sont interpellés en possession des ossements humains qu'ils écoulent sous l'appellation de or blanc. Le mystère qui continue de planer autour de cette affaire est de savoir qui en sont les principaux acheteurs et que font-ils exactement de ce reste humain. Ces 4 hors la loi qui foulent aux pieds la dignité humaine et commercialisent les ossements humains ont été mis à la disposition de la justice.
Prévention contre le Covid-19, un député RDPC propose d'injecter des doses de vaccins anti-Covid dans de l'eau minérale. La déclaration de l'honorable Momfo David, qui suscite un tollé de réaction, intervient dans un contexte où les populations sont réticentes, dans un contexte de réticence de la population à se faire vacciner. Je vous propose de l'écouter.
Ici, on pourrait mettre à contribution nos sociétés brassicoles qui produisent de l'eau potable, Tanguy, Supermont, Eau Pure, Omada, ainsi de suite, pour qu'elles injectent ces produits dans des vagues précises et spéciales de bouteilles d'eau et en quantité suffisante pour tous, sans augmenter les prix de vente, car on pourrait les subventionner. Ceci pourrait nous permettre, pas d'annuler les vaccins, mais de combler le grand vide et les risques de vaccination partielle. Vous avez parlé de 20%. Quand on vaccine 20%, il reste 80%. Vous avez dit l'objectif c'est 40%. Quand on aura vacciné 40%, il restera 60%. Et parmi ces 60% restants, il y aura toujours un peu le virus quelque part qui va se multiplier. Il faut quelque chose que tout le monde consomme en un temps record, qui éradique la maladie, qui boute hors de nous et hors du Cameroun cette maladie, donc cette pandémie.
Et comment réagit la communauté scientifique et le corps médical face à une telle controverse? Distiller du vaccin anti-Covid-19 dans de l'eau minérale serait-il une stratégie efficace pour vacciner le plus grand nombre de personnes? Cela respecte-t-il le protocole de vaccination? Le docteur Bruno Tengan, engagé dans le suivi des cas Covid-19 et promoteur du Centre des maladies respiratoires, balaie d'un revers de la main toutes ces allégations infondées et inexactes. Je vous propose de l'écouter.
La voie orale ne fait pas partie des voies d'administration des vaccins. Jusqu'alors, personne n'a prouvé qu'on pouvait administrer un vaccin par voie orale. La plupart des vaccins dont on dispose aujourd'hui, pour ne pas dire tous les vaccins sont administrés par voie injectable. Pour l'instant, je crois que le gouvernement camerounais a insisté sur le fait que les vaccinations n'étaient pas obligatoires. C'est-à-dire quand votre âme et conscience, vous décidez de vous faire vacciner ou pas. Et que ce n'était pas obligatoire, ce n'est pas une obligation. Le plus important, c'est les campagnes d'information qu'on fait. J'ai l'impression que les anti-vaccins ont pris le pas sur ceux qui sont pro-vaccins. Dans les réseaux sociaux, un petit peu partout, on ne parle que des effets secondaires supposés des vaccins qui sont graves à long terme, à court terme, stérilisation, puce 5G et ainsi de suite. Je pense que nos pouvoirs publics et nous-mêmes en tant que médecins, nous devons absolument insister sur l'information et l'éducation des personnes, de sorte que quand quelqu'un prend la décision de se faire vacciner ou de ne pas faire se vacciner, qu'il ait quand même un maximum d'éléments sur lesquels il peut s'appuyer pour prendre sa décision. Le but du vaccin, c'est de vous faire injecter grosso modo, je ne vais pas rentrer dans les détails, une forme atténuée ou tuée d'un microbe, pour que qui ne peut pas être dangereux pour vous, et votre organisme va se mobiliser. Votre système immunitaire, qui est l'armée qui défend votre corps, va se comporter comme si c'était le vrai microbe et va fabriquer des armes. Le jour où le vrai microbe arrivera, votre armée, votre immunité qui est déjà là, votre système immunitaire va le combattre. Donc dans la plupart des cas, même si vous faites la maladie, comme dans le cas du Covid, ce sera une forme légère, ce ne sera pas une forme mortelle.
Restons sur le dossier consacré à la lutte contre le coronavirus. De graves irrégularités ont émaillé la gestion du fonds spécial initié par le chef de l'État. Le recours systématique aux marchés spéciaux et les déblocages de fonds ont eu des effets susceptibles de faciliter les détournements des fonds publics, faute de traçabilité des flux financiers. Plus de 167 milliards de francs CFA ont été dépensés, montant largement au-dessus des prévisions estimées à 99 milliards. D'autres précisions avec Aïk Cyril.
C'est un rapport pour l'essentiel porté sur des activités menées par 3 départements ministériels. Le ministère de la Santé publique, le ministère de la Recherche scientifique et de l'Innovation et le ministère des Finances pendant l'exercice 2020. La Chambre des comptes de la Cour suprême précise que les dépenses des autres départements ministériels jusqu'au 31 décembre 2020 ont été peu significatives. Sur les 22 activités conduites par les 3 ministères cités plus haut, la Chambre relève que les dépenses engagées, plus de 157 milliards de francs CFA, étaient largement au-dessus des prévisions, plus de 99 milliards de francs CFA du Fonds spécial de solidarité nationale pour la lutte contre le coronavirus et ses répercussions économiques et sociales. Le décalage entre les prévisions budgétaires des activités à mener et les montants finalement dépensés amène la Chambre à questionner la régularité de l'emploi des fonds publics ainsi que la performance de l'action, notamment son économie, son efficience et son efficacité. Dans l'examen des documents fournis par les comptables publics, les auditeurs de la Chambre des comptes de la Cour suprême dénoncent de graves erreurs ou approximations. En confrontant les informations comptables avec les documents contractuels, les auditeurs remarquent des erreurs d'addition et de reporting, la non prise en compte de certains marchés ainsi que des dépenses faites par mise à disposition des fonds. Bref, pour les auditeurs de la Chambre des comptes, les documents comptables émanant de plusieurs sources officielles sont souvent contradictoires. Concluant son audit, la Chambre des comptes de la Cour suprême est parvenue à reconstituer les comptes 2020 du Fonds spécial de solidarité nationale pour la lutte contre le coronavirus. 186,8 milliards de francs CFA en recettes et 167,7 milliards de francs CFA en dépenses, pas toujours bien justifiées.
Un public reportage avant de mettre un terme à cette édition du journal. Des parlementaires à la Cameroon Telecommunication, ils s'y sont rendus pour un échange portant à la fois sur les performances de ce géant de la téléphonie mobile, ses difficultés et perspectives. Reportage.
Les parlementaires se soucient de l'offre de services de la Cameroon Telecommunication, Camtel. À cet effet, le réseau des parlementaires pour les technologies de l'information et de la communication, REPATIC, vient d'effectuer une visite au siège de la Cameroon Telecommunication à Yaoundé pour une séance de travail aux objectifs bien précis.
La qualité de service du réseau Camtel, les coûts et son occupation sur le territoire national. Nous avons donc posé ces questions à la direction qui nous a expliqué à peu près les difficultés qu'ils avaient, mais que dans les jours à venir, ils vont faire le maximum pour s'étendre dans tout le territoire.
À ces préoccupations des parlementaires, Camtel précise la ligne directrice de sa mission.
Nos 2 axes stratégiques sont conçus autour customer centricity et change management. C'est-à-dire que notre action n'a de raison d'être que pour autant qu'elle concerne le client. C'est-à-dire que mettre le client au centre de toutes nos activités et la satisfaction du client doit être l'objectif recherché.
Des éclairages qui permettent aux membres du Répatic de se faire une idée de la qualité des services déjà rendus par Camtel.
Sur les 58 départements, nous avons appris qu'ils ont déjà mis pied sur 52. Concernant les prix, ils estiment même qu'ils sont à des prix assez bas parce qu'ils ont une concurrence pas déloyale vis-à-vis des autres, mais ils sont obligés de tenir compte qu'ils sont un service public.
Une véritable aubaine pour Camtel qui saisit cette opportunité pour faire cas d'un certain nombre de difficultés.
Nous avons profité pour leur dire les problèmes qui sont les nôtres et solliciter leur accompagnement, leur aide, ce qu'ils ont accepté, c'est-à-dire de porter nos doléances et nos préoccupations au plus haut niveau pour qu'elles puissent être prises en compte et trouver des solutions.
Celle-ci porte notamment sur les travaux qui empêchent le déploiement de la fibre optique sur tout le territoire national, à l'image de ceux actuellement en cours sur le chantier de la route Kribi à Com 2 et le vandalisme qui voit les câbles de la fibre optique sectionnés assez régulièrement. Des points négatifs que Camtel espère voir résolus pour mieux offrir ses services à l'avenir.
Avec ce public reportage que nous mettons un terme à la première partie de ce journal, the second part is with you, Immaculate Forgoy. Good day once again.
Once more, good day to you, Julian Babisai, and to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for staying with us on the second segment of the news. We begin with education, that is in the Northwest region, where our correspondent Bo Stella closely followed day one of the written session of the first school living certificate examination and that of the GC ordinary and advanced level examinations. According to her, the exams were written in a tense atmosphere given the socio-political crisis ongoing in that region. Details in her report.
As early as 7 a.m., majority of students sitting in for the examination by the General Certificate of Examination Board and the pupils sitting in for the first school leaving examinations were already in their respective centers. The examinations are taking place in the Northwest region within an uncertain security climate, reason why parents are accompanying their children. Schools in the city center are host to schools from other divisions, and state forces have been stationed at campuses.
We have security inputs at two levels. First, the communities that make it possible for things to happen, because that's where it starts. It's only when communities decide that the community should be safe that they become safe. The military and security forces only come in to assist those communities.
In the Northwest region, over 20,000 students are expected to sit for the GCE in 50 centers.
I've made a virtual round of all the divisions this morning, and the exercise has started off smoothly. We've not had any report of any incident, either against a student or a teacher.
In the basic education sector, some absences were recorded on day one of the examinations. The first school leaving certificate examination is the first on the academic ladder of these pupils, reason why the mayor of Bafut, Lawrence Ngwakongo, visited the government bilingual practicing school Old Town Bamenda, where pupils from schools across Mezam and Momo divisions are writing the exams.
Coming here today is as a result of the good number of people who have come from Bafut to write the first school living certificate. These children who have equally learned through thick and thin, that all of us know, and I needed to come to encourage them. I equally came with nose mask to equally make them know that Corona is still a reality.
Echoes from other divisions of the Northwest region indicate that the examinations are going on hitch-free. At the time of this report, pupils had finished for day one, while students were rounding up the last subjects for day one of the examination.
And the armed conflict did not permit some students to sit in for the first schooling certificate examination as well as the GC ordinary and advanced level. Kids from Dikume, Balue and Konye subdivisions had to move to Kumba in order to be able to take part in the written session of the GC Ordinary Level and Advanced Level examinations. Details in this report compiled by Fomi Armstrong Sander.
Because of an unbearable security situation, 24 candidates from Dikume Balue subdivision in the Indian division and 19 from Konye subdivision in the Meme division of the same region had to sit for the first school living certificate examination and the general certificate of education, ordinary and advanced levels in Kumba. Mr. Ojong is the inspector of basic education for Konye subdivision.
Yes, because the crisis, the war, is plenty for Konye. Pass the way it did for Kumba. Small security at least, they for Kumba. Pass the way it did for Konye.
He adopted the strategy to bring kids from Konye subdivision to Kumba after his office was burned.
My office was burnt as you interviewed me and you saw the office. Since then, at least nothing has been done because of the crisis. So the strategy I came out with, I had to go to parents. They send those who can send their children to Kumba, where it's a bit safe, so that I teach them in Kumba. I mobilize my teachers, teach them in Kumba.
Difficult not only for candidates from Konye and Dikume Balue subdivisions, as officials say those from villages within Kumba Free subdivision had to be moved in over the weekend.
It's really moving as planned because I, the SDO, together with the head of administration in the Meme division, we've done a lot of groundwork to ensure that these pupils come here and write their exams. Some even came during the weekend and they are sleeping in town just to make sure that they participate in this exercise. So at the end of the day, I am so happy. You see,
after a round of examination centers, the divisional officer for Kumba 1 subdivision says all went on hitch-free.
And at least we are satisfied that enough security dispositions have equally been taken, and students and the pupils are writing without any problem. And by the time we are rounding up,
the Meme Divisional Delegation of Secondary Education says a total of 5,946 candidates sat for the BAPC examination in the French subsystem of education and the General Certificate of Education, ordinary and advanced levels in Kumba this day.
And away from education, local administrative authorities in the Southwest region, headed by the governor of the Southwest region, Bernard Kalabilai, and some traditional rulers met yesterday in Boya. They were discussing on some of the resolutions that were taken during the major national dialogue in Yaoundé. And now, in this report, Derek Jato will be telling us how this event went about in Boya.
At this other side of the door divided are stakeholders of the Southwest region in a working session with the Southwest governor. They have been here since 12 noon, this particular Tuesday, the 29th day of June 2021. They are discussing, among other things, the security situation of the Southwest region. We have been made to understand that this particular meeting was a platform to all the delegates and to all our divisional stakeholders to put down what they feel that could be done to bring normalcy in the region. Equally, we have traditional rulers in there, and a while ago they break up into commissions, and now they have come back. Certainly, they are now discussing resolutions. We have been made to understand by participants that, among other things, the government says she is now ready to listen and to look into what needs to be done to bring a lasting solution to the Anglophone crisis that has been going on for plus 4 years now. But the major the major point that has been discussed here. People of the region and stakeholders, especially traditional rulers, were worried, saying that they want to start feeling the impact of the major national dialogue. Well, whatsoever has been the case, the Southwest governor told them that they should go and rediscuss in their various divisions and to assess whether what they put forth as a resolution or what they put forth as proposals to Yaoundé is really gaining some grounds on the field in the Southwest region. Well, the Southwest governor equally mentioned that the regional council is one of the fallout of the major national dialogue, and now that funds have been provided to the council, it is time not to talk again, but it is time for action, calling on the regional councillors to go to the field and of course to make sure that they create the impact. If not, the Southwest people should hold them responsible for not putting in place their demands. Well, that is the situation here. The resolution is yet to come out, but at the moment, the Southwest governor and the stakeholders of the Southwest region are in this working session since 12 noon. Whatsoever will be the outcome, the Southwest population is expectant. Of course, they want action, not what. Derek Jato, Southwest Governor's Office, signing out.
And up next, the governor of the Southwest region is going to be telling us on how they plan implementing some of the resolutions that were taken during the major national dialogue. Take a listen to him in his excerpt.
The meeting is to bring all the living forces of this region, all the stakeholders, the local official elected, to go to the grassroots population and to talk to those of their sons and daughters, those of their family members who are still hanging around with guns, to drop their guns. Because today, what the population of this region were expecting, they already have it. I mean, the regional assembly with special status that can do all what the population were expecting. They can solve all the problems of the population, because we have in that special status commissioners who are like local ministers with a whole house of chiefs. So they no longer need to continue in disturbing the peaceful life of the people, the development of this very important region in terms of economic, by moving around, kidnapping. The state has done his part of the work. The head of state has given them the region of special status. Now they should go and talk to their sons. After the grand national dialogue, now it's time for local dialogue within the families, within the communities, to convince their children that they should stop, they should drop their guns, they should drop their weapons.
Governor Bernard Kalabilai speaking there. And still in the Southwest region, the Bororo communities say they have been adversely affected by the over 4-year armed conflict in the Northwest and Southwest regions. They say their unity is threatened, so there is need for it to be protected. They were speaking recently during a cultural jamboree. Details in this report compiled by Davidson Maimo.
Speaking during a gathering bringing together the Mbororo community in Fako Division under the canopy of the Mbororo Social, Cultural and Development Association, Boskuda, to welcome their national president, the regional president Musa Abubakar says the ongoing social unrest in the Northwest and Southwest region has greatly affected the association and the Mbororo community in general.
We are as well faced with the problem of assisting our internally displaced refugees due to the current socio-political crisis in the region.
He used the occasion to beckon on the government of Cameroon for the Mbororo community to be taken into consideration in their award of project and employment.
It is sad to see most of these youth today either in the car washing point or roaming the various streets.
His point was buttressed by the Deputy State Council for Tiku, Sule Ibrahim, and Ali Muhammadu, 2021 Mount Cameroon champion.
The Bororo community has reached a certain level that should be applauded. We have graduated, we have master, the student of PhD degrees. I was impressed that other parts, not in athletics domain only, is growing.
The Mbororos, who were not interested in education and other social inclusion, are today gradually wiping out this notion.
Really, we are moving and we are getting into the social affairs, we are interacting with other people. In fact, we are really growing up as a community. If you go to most schools now, you find Muslim girls and they are being encouraged to go to school. So the notion of us not going to school is no longer there.
We clamoring that all the Bororo community will be educated in the long run.
The event, which crowned week-long cultural activities, ended with a football final that saw the Mboro community of Tiku emerging victorious over that of Limbe. Adamu Amadu is the national president.
I think this shows us how solidarity can gather us together. Bororo youth are not only capable to be cattle handlers, they can also be a good football player.
And on to something else, a workshop aimed at empowering journalists with the necessary skills that can make them accurate, balanced and objective while reporting took place recently in Limbe. The media men and women were also updated with mechanisms in conflict reporting. Right now, take a listen to some of them who participated in that workshop in this excerpt.
I am Yannick Fonki, the editor-in-chief of High Television. I think this training is very timely, especially within the context we find ourselves, the ongoing crisis. You know, reporting conflict has been a very challenging moment for many journalists in the two English-speaking regions. The process of writing and reporting issues happening have got many of us into harm's way. So this training comes in to boost our capacity and give us some of these very important tools so we can be able to report the crisis with all objectivity, fairness, accuracy, and also avoid getting ourselves into harm's way.
My name is Lucrece Ahmad. I'm a journalist with Tico Council Community Radio. Personally, it's going to enrich me, enable me to report accurately, first of all, accurately and objectively, because when dealing with your audience, we're dealing with different people, and sometimes the way they're going to perceive information is probably not the way we intend to send it out. So we have to be very, very conscious with the type of information we send out.
I am Sharon Yombe from Radio Bonakanda. This workshop, it will help us report with credibility so that we will be able to solve even conflicts between people around us.
I am Larry Satyan, reporter with Cameroon Infonet. This workshop on conflict-sensitive reporting is very timely, especially in Cameroon, where we have a series of conflicts in the northern and southern regions, in the east and in the far north region, and in the entire country as a whole, where we have ethno-political tensions. There is need for journalists to be aware.
That's it for this edition of the Midday Bilingual Newscast on Equinox Television. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Stay blessed in the company of more programs on Equinox Television. Have a blessed day, Julian.
Thank you, Immaculate Forgo. Je vous souhaite également une agréable journée. Mesdames et messieurs, c'est ici que nous mettons un terme à cette édition du journal. À suivre juste après votre quotidien santé présenté par Nadine.